Yo, welcome back to another video. Today it's Sunday and we're gonna be watching today's gonna be a react video. I know last one was also react, but I look couldn't find a good game to play, so I decided why don't we just let's not do a horror one. It's scary dinosaurs that were straight up psychopathic killers. Be watching that today, seeing how dinosaurs really were, and let's get right to it.
A couple of years ago, paleontologists found this T-Rex skull with bite marks all over its face. When they measured the spacing, they realized something pretty messed up. Another T-Rex had basically chewed on this guy's head while he was still alive, and somehow he survived it. But what's most interesting is that this isn't the only instance of dinosaurs acting in almost psychopathic ways. Cannibalism, extreme aggression, behavior.
Cannibalism is actually pretty normal, I think, because I mean, not all animals do it, but a lot of animals would eat each other.
That is often not seen in nature. So I did some digging and
Not
I
like
found a
that
ton
though.
of
Like, let's say some animals had the opportunity to eat the meat of their self, not from exactly them, they would eat it. They would probably not
different
realize
dinosaurs
unless they like
that were
refuse
so
to
aggressive,
smell.
you could probably call them psychopathic. But more on the T-Rex. You know what's weird about the T-Rex? Everyone thinks they know this dinosaur, but most people have no idea just how.
Bro, scientists don't know a lot about dinosaurs. Like, we know a good amount, but there's still so much that we're not sure. Like T-Rexes, like you see in the movies, like they actually have feathers. They're not just scaly.
See, there's this T-Rex skull called Stan, great name by the way, and when paleontologists first looked at it, they noticed these strange holes in the back of the head. These weren't just any type of hole, they were perfect puncture wounds that went deep into the bone. And as I said earlier, once they measured those holes, guess what fit perfectly? T-Rex teeth. T-Rex while he was still alive and somehow lived through it, because the bone actually healed around the wounds, which means this wasn't some quick death. This was straight up a face-biting session that Stan had to endure and then walk around with scars for the rest of his life. But wait, it gets worse. Paleontologists started looking at more T-Rex skulls, and they found 324 different face bite wounds across different specimens. 324. That's not just a few random fights. That is a pattern. These things were just biting each other in the face on a regular basis.
Bro, they're probably fighting over food. Like, I mean, a lot of animals are territorial. So, I don't know, they're probably just fighting each other over something.
Gentle love bites someone's girlfriend might do to them when they're sitting in bed together. We're talking about puncture wounds from teeth that were designed to crush bone. The kind of bite that could punch through a car door. And then there's the cannibalism part. Yeah, they have found T-Rex bones with other T-Rex teeth marks on them. These are not from fighting marks. These are feeding marks, the kind you get when something is slowly stripping meat off bones. Even the toe bones had bite marks, which means after the big chunks were gone, they were still there picking at the scraps. Yes, your favorite movie dinosaur was actually eating its own family members. This is the fearsome Corgosaurus Rex. His name is Flapjack. And if you don't like and subscribe, he literally is going to eat you. Look at his face. This is a fearsome apex predator from the prehistoric period. You don't want to mess with him. T-Rex face biting looks friendly compared to what happened in prehistoric Madagascar. Madagascar used to have this dinosaur called a Majungasaurus and holds a very special record in paleontology. It was the first dinosaur where scientists could definitively prove cannibalism happened. Not just suspect it, but actually proved it with fossil evidence that would hold up in court today. Here's how they figured it out. They found Majungasaurus bones with bite marks on them, and when they looked at those bite marks under a microscope, they could see the exact spacing and shape of the teeth that made them. They then compared those marks to every single predator that lived in Madagascar at the time. Nothing matched, except for Majungasaurus teeth. The bite marks had these parallel scratches from the serrated edges of the teeth, and the spacing was perfect. It wasn't some other dinosaur eating Majungasaurus. It was Majungasaurus eating Majungasaurus. And this wasn't just a one-time thing. They found multiple specimens with the same evidence, which means this was normal behavior for them. Now, you might be thinking, well, maybe they were just scavenging already dead ones. But here's
They
the
they were
thing,
fighting
Madagascar
over.
back then was basically a desert. It was
They were
dry,
they were out there
hot,
really
and food was
hungry. They
hard
were
to come
fighting over
by. And when you're
something.
starving, you don't get picky
I'm
about where
telling you.
your next meal comes from, even if it used to walk around and have the same face as you. The researchers who discovered this said finding dinosaur cannibalism wasn't actually that shocking, because modern animals do it all the time when resources get scarce. Hell, it even happens in my household. No, I don't mean anything weird by that, but you see these two fish tanks behind me? Well, I have this type of fish called a guppy, and if you don't know what guppies are, basically guppies have babies constantly. I'm talking about
Oh, and they
30 to
eat their
50
own
per month. And the
kids.
parents are so bad at parenting that they will literally pop out the guppies, then turn around and eat them. We as humans take it
That's
for
actually
granted,
so
but in
weird.
nature, unfortunately, cannibalism is pretty
Yeah,
common.
it's
But
normal.
there's something a little
It's exactly what I was
unsettling
saying
about
before.
finding fossil proof that these creatures were methodologically stripping
Bro,
flesh.
you know what people have to do? If you have a fish and they have kids, what people will do is put them in separate tanks to stop them from eating their own
Madagascar
kids
wasn't just
until they
an
grow up.
island. It was a place where dinosaurs went to eat each other. Now, individual cannibals are disturbing, but wait until you see what a drought does to this species.
Allosaurus.
There's this place in Colorado called Megatmore Quarry, and paleontologists thought they'd found a normal dinosaur graveyard, just a bunch of Jurassic period fossils that died together during some bad times 150 million years ago. Then they started counting bite marks. Out of 2,368 bones they dug up, a third of them have been chewed on, and not by modern scavengers, but by other dinosaurs. And when they looked closely at the bones had the bite marks, 17% of them came from other meat-eating dinosaurs,
Allosaurus.
including Allosaurus bones that had been gnawed on by other Allosaurus. Now, when you find bite marks on a leg bone or a rib, that makes sense. Predators go for the meaty parts, but these paleontologists were finding bite marks on toe bones and spine pieces. Those are the kind of bones that don't have much meat on them at all, which means these Allosauruses weren't just hunting, they were desperate. The quarry represents
Yeah, that's what I'm
the
saying. They
drought
were probably like really hungry. Cause bro, like, I guess a lot of animals get along, but a lot of animals also can get territorial against each other and kill each other. So it makes sense
really
though.
bad one where water
Like I
sources
wouldn't. I'm
dried
not
up and
surprised that
everything started
they would eat
dying.
their own
And when
kind.
large
A
predators
lot of
were
animals
hungry
do
enough,
that.
they
It's really
stopped being
common.
picky about what they eat.
But I don't
Even if
think
what
they would
eat
regularly attack their own kind if they saw him. Like
it
they would.
used to look exactly like them. In
Because they're
fact,
not really
one of the
like
bite marks they found
easy
was so big
to
that
hunt.
only a
Your own
massive
kind.
Allosaurus could have
I saw
actually
somebody
made
my
it.
size,
We're
like
talking about giant carnivores
in
fighting
let's say
over
we're all
scraps of dried up
cannibalism.
landscape, and when the
Does it
smaller
make
ones
sense?
died, the bigger ones just kept eating. The paleontologists studying this said Allosaurus probably weren't picky eaters to begin with, but during droughts, scavenging and cannibalism were definitely on the menu, which is a very polite way of saying these things would eat literally anything that stopped moving, including their own relatives. Now, eating your own species during hard times is one thing, but some dinosaurs got even more creative. Scientists found this Daspletosaurus fossil that tells probably the most depressing dinosaur story ever discovered. This thing got its ass kicked while it was alive and then got eaten after it died. The skull is just covered in bite wounds, puncture holes in the back of the head, gouges on the face, chunks of bone missing, all from other Daspletosaurus teeth. And you can tell this dinosaur survived these attacks because the bones started healing around the wounds. So this poor thing went through multiple face-biting sessions with its own
Well, I
species.
don't think a lot of these dinosaurs might have just fought, and those marks are just there. I mean,
and just kept going.
at least for a couple
The
of them.
story doesn't end there, because after this beat up Daspletosaurus finally died, another one found the body and decided to have lunch. In fact, the skull has completely different bite marks that were made after death. Big punctures and scratches where something was purposely stripping meat off the bones. They even
Damn.
bit both ends of some bones, which means whoever was eating this carcass was really thorough about it. Nothing was going to waste. The researchers called this a unique record because it shows one individual that experienced both fighting and cannibalism. This dinosaur got bullied its entire life by other members of its species and then finally became their dinner when it finally died. And apparently this wasn't unusual behavior. Face-biting scars show up on most Tyrannosaur fossils. These things were just constantly beating each other up and then eating whoever lost. The whole thing kind of paints a scary picture of Tyrannosaur society that's just completely brutal. You spend your life getting your face chewed on by your neighbors, and when you die, those same neighbors show up to your funeral with napkins tucked under their necks ready to eat you. You know, it makes you appreciate humanity
cycle
a
of
little more,
life,
doesn't
bro.
it? Now, getting bullied by a couple dinosaurs sucks, but imagine getting jumped by 7. Seven
that's
giant
weird.
predators died together in Argentina, and not just any predators. Mapusaurus, each one about the size of a city bus, with jaws that could bite through a car. When paleontologists dug them up, they found adults, teenagers, and juveniles all in the same spot. Different ages, but they all died at the same time in the same place, which means these things likely lived together. And when you're a 10-meter long carnivore hanging out with 6 of your buddies, you're not the type of dinosaur that hunts rabbits. The only prey in their neighborhood big enough to feed a gang of Mapusaurus was Argentinosaurus, a sauropod so massive it weighed as much as 12 elephants.
Wait, that's a lot of elephants.
Land animals that ever lived.
Wait, that's really big.
Now, a single Mapusaurus attacking an adult Argentinosaurus would be suicide. That's like a cat attacking a cow.
That makes
With
sense.
7 Mapusaurus working together,
that's really difficult
that is a
to get out
different
of.
story. They probably surrounded it, some going for the legs, others jumping on the neck, a few more slashing at the sides. The Argentinosaurus would be spinning around trying to shake them off.
But you're done.
Only so
You're
much
getting
you
jumped.
do when
Like,
you're
imagine
being
you
attacked
getting
from
jumped by
all
7
directions
guys.
Things with knife-sized
What are you
teeth.
gonna do?
But the Mapusaurus bone beds suggest that they died in the process. Maybe they got trampled while trying to bring down their target. Maybe they got stuck in mud.
At least one of them had a
carcass. Either way, they died together because they hunted together, which means these weren't just mindless killing machines. They were organized mindless killing machines. They had to coordinate, communicate, and work as a team to take down prey that was literally 10 times bigger than them. Pack hunting is scary enough when it's wolves. When it's 3-ton dinosaurs with heads the size of bathtubs, it becomes something else entirely. These dinosaurs were smart and aggressive. So yeah, land predators working together is downright terrifying.
Spinosaurus!
But water predators just happen to be worse. Most people think Spinosaurus just ate fish all day. Turns out those people were wrong. Paleontologists found a pterosaur neck bone with a Spinosaurus tooth stuck in it, and not around it, but physically embedded in the bone, which means a 15-meter long semi-aquatic dinosaur grabbed a flying reptile
my bad, I was checking
hard
something.
enough to lose a tooth process. This wasn't some gentle fish catching behavior. This was a violent attack on something with a 6-foot wingspan. Spinosaurus lived in river systems across North Africa, and it wasn't content to just sit in the water waiting for fish to swim by. It was an ambush predator. Picture a crocodile, but 3 times longer and probably 10 times as mean. The thing about ambush predators is that they're patient until they're not. A Spinosaurus could be floating motionless in a river for hours, looking like a log with a sail on its back. Then something comes to drink water, or a pterosaur dips down to catch a fish,
that's smart.
and suddenly there's 15 meters of prehistoric nightmare exploding out of the water. They found bite marks from Spinosaurus on other dinosaur bones too. Not just pterosaurs, but land animals that came too close to the water's edge, which means Spinosaurus wasn't just fishing.
Like a crocodile.
It was opportunistically grabbing anything that got within range. The scariest part is how little warning you'd get. On land, you can usually see a predator coming. Water, Spinosaurus could be 10 feet
completely
away,
different
and
territories.
you never know until those jaws are clamped around your leg. And once it had you,
A lot of the
massive
water
claws
animals
would
that
hold
live
you
in waters
underwater,
have
and
echolocation
those
or have
cone-shaped
some
teeth
type of
punch
thing
holes
that
through
they can
whatever
sense
grab.
before
Water
animal
crocodiles
is
were
near
already
them.
terrifying enough. Spinosaurus was just that
The
concept scaled
animals
up to
also want to have
proportions. So while Spinosaurus hunted alone,
echolocation
it was
on
definitely
land, but
extremely aggressive
not
predator.
as
But
much.
let's move on to a pack hunter, because some raptors made a fatal teamwork mistake. Because
Utah
paleontologists
raptors.
in Utah found a 9-ton block of sandstone that contains what might be the dumbest group death in dinosaur history. Inside this block are at least 6 Utahraptor skeletons. Adults, teenagers, juveniles, a whole family of giant raptors. And mixed in with them are the remains of whatever they were trying to eat when they all died. What happened was probably this. Some herbivore got stuck in what was basically prehistoric quicksand. Easy meal, right? So one Utahraptor goes in to finish it off, but the mud is stickier than expected, and now the raptor is stuck too. Then its family shows up. Instead of maybe finding a stick or thinking this through, they apparently decided the best plan was to also jump into the death trap, one by one, until the entire pack was stuck in the same mud pit.
That's so
slowly
stupid.
sinking to their death. They found evidence that some of the raptors were stepping on each other as they sank, which means this went from a simple hunting trip to complete chaos pretty quickly. These were supposed to be smart predators, and they managed to kill themselves and step over each other to try and save themselves to get out of dying, which is pretty messed up when you think about it. These dinosaurs are known to be pack hunters, but this fossil suggests that they would literally kill their own family to save themselves. The really embarrassing part is that Utahraptor were massive. We're talking about raptors the size of polar bears with
Polar bears are
9-inch
pretty
claws on
big
each
still,
foot.
let's be
They could
honest.
probably take down pretty much anything they wanted. Apparently, their weakness was basic physics and mud. Each Utahraptor was built more heavily than other raptors, with thick leg bones and huge muscles for jumping on prey and holding down.
I just realized all these like bear type animals, they have like the same foot as like conures and caws, stuff like they all
muscle
are
and
built
claws,
like
and they got
this.
defeated by wet dirt. This fossil block is still being studied, but it's already clear this was a complete disaster for everyone involved. But at least those Utahraptor died quickly, unlike their smaller cousins' victims. Deinonychus basically invented the whole pack of raptors thing that shows up in every
Wait, they
dinosaur
still look
movie.
hella big
The reason
though.
we know they hunted in groups is because they kept dying next to their food. Paleontologists found multiple sites where Deinonychus remains were scattered around the skeleton of Tenontosaurus,
That's really big.
which was this big plant eater about the size of a small bus. The first time they found this, they thought maybe the raptors died trying to take down this massive herbivore in some heroic last stand. But then they kept finding the same thing, Deinonychus teeth and bones around Tenontosaurus carcasses. In fact, they found 14 different sites across Montana and Oklahoma, all with the same setup. Now, Tenontosaurus was way bigger than any individual Deinonychus. We're talking about something that could kick hard enough to shatter ribs, and it probably weighed more than all the raptors attacking it combined. So either these raptors were incredibly stupid or they figured out how to work together.
Yeah.
Evidence points to working together, but not in a cute, coordinated way you see in nature documentaries. More in the chaotic feeding frenzy way you see when hyenas find a dead elephant. Some researchers think the raptors didn't even cooperate that much. Maybe one Deinonychus would attack a Tenontosaurus, and if it managed
they probably
to
got in the neck
kill it, the sounds
kill
and
it.
smells would attract others. Then they would all show up to claim a piece of the action, which would explain why so many raptor fossils are found with broken bones around these carcass sites. They weren't just fighting the herbivore, they were fighting each other over who got to eat what parts.
Exactly.
Those famous raptor sickle claws weren't just for killing their prey, they were probably pretty useful for keeping your dinner companions at a respectful distance while you grabbed all the good stuff. These dinosaurs didn't look like they shared much with their family. In fact, they might have killed their family just to get a meal.
Exactly,
So
they
yeah,
fight.
messy, but
Ooh,
sometimes we get the
velociraptors.
perfect snapshots of violence in some fossils we find. There's a fossil in Mongolia that shows exactly what happens when a velociraptor picks a fight with something its own size. The fossil is called Fighting Dinosaurs, and it's two skeletons locked together in what was clearly their final moment. On one side, you've got a Protoceratops, a pig-sized herbivore with a sharp beak and a bad attitude. The other side, a velociraptor with its signature claw buried deep in the Protoceratops' throat. But the Protoceratops wasn't going down without a fight. Its jaws are clamped around the velociraptor's arm, and the bone shows fractures from the bite pressure. This wasn't a quick kill. This was a prolonged struggle where both animals were trying their best to murder each other. They probably died when a sand dune collapsed on them mid-fight, which means their last thoughts were probably still focused on winning this stupid fight. Death literally had to interrupt them. The velociraptor's claw is positioned perfectly to slash the Protoceratops' throat, which would have been a killing blow if it had connected properly, but the Protoceratops managed to grab the raptor's arm and break it before that happened.
Yeah.
What makes this fossil so perfect is that it captures the exact moment when both animals realized they'd made a terrible mistake. Protoceratops couldn't go without getting its throat cut, and the velociraptor couldn't pull free without losing its arm, so they just held each other in this death grip until the sand buried them both. The whole thing lasted probably less than a minute, but it's been preserved for 75 million years as the ultimate example of prehistoric rage. Two dinosaurs who refused to back down from a fight that neither of them was going to survive. So yeah, ultimately it's
never
a pretty
back
cool
down,
fossil.
never
But
what?
some other dinosaurs made beating each other a complete lifestyle.
All of them same.
Gorgosaurus
Bro, how many
skulls tell a
T-Rexes
story about what
like
it was
clones
really
are there?
like to be a tyrannosaur. That story is mostly about getting your face bitten off on a regular basis. Like I mentioned earlier, 60% of adult tyrannosaur skulls have bite wounds on them. These are not random injuries. They are specific bite patterns around the eyes, snout, and jaw area, and they are all healed over. which means these dinosaurs lived through having their faces used as a chew toy. The wounds are always in the same spots, which tells us this wasn't accidental violence. This was a ritualized face biting session. Tyrannosaurs had developed a whole social system based on biting each other's faces till somebody gave up. One Gorgosaurus skull has multiple gouges around the eye socket that match perfectly with Tyrannosaur teeth. Another has a chunk missing from the snout that healed into a smooth scar.
I'm lucky tired.
Battles. They were more like extremely violent.
It's only like 7, bro.
The pattern shows up once the dinosaurs hit sexual maturity.
It's close to 8.
Means face biting was probably how they sorted
out it just hit 7. It's already dark though outside.
Showing off with fancy dances or colorful displays, Tyrannosaurs just bit each other's faces until the hierarchy was established. What's really disturbing is how casual this violence seems to have been. These weren't rare fights. This was happening all the time, enough that most adults carried permanent facial scars from their teenage years. A typical Gorgosaurus probably spent its adolescence getting its face.
I could look, you take one on. I think I'm strong enough to do that. Give me spear or something, and I got it.
Bigger Tyrannosaurs. Then, once it was big enough, it got to return the favor to the next generation. All this face biting seems really bad, until you hear about the falsely accused cannibal. For over 50 years, Colophysis had the worst reputation in paleontology. Museums displayed it as the dinosaur that ate its babies. Textbooks called it a cannibal. Tour guides would point to its skeleton and explain how this monster would devour its own young when food got scarce. The whole thing started when a paleontologist found adult Colophysis skeletons with small bones inside their rib cages. Obviously, baby Colophysis bones, right? What else could they be? Well, turns out they weren't baby Colophysis bones at all. In 2006, someone finally bothered to take a closer look at those stomach contents. They discovered the bones actually came from small crocodiles and lizards, not baby dinosaurs. The cannibalistic Colophysis had just been eating regular prey the whole time. But even worse, some of those stomach contents weren't even inside the adults. They were just juvenile skeletons that happened to be lying under the adults when they all died together. We spent 50 years of calling this dinosaur a baby killer because nobody checked the actual work they were doing. The researchers who ended up clearing the Colophysis
a lot of animals, instead of killing their babies, they kind of just abandoned it too.
We're probably pretty embarrassed about the whole thing, but the damage was already done, and that's why we're talking about this dinosaur in this video. Colophysis still gets called the cannibal dinosaur in older books and websites that haven't been updated yet. Its reputation is basically ruined forever because paleontologists in the 1950s jumped to conclusions. Ultimately, the real story is way more boring. Colophysis lived in groups, ate small animals, and occasionally died together during droughts or other disasters. There was no cannibalism, there was no baby eating, and no psychotic behavior whatsoever. It's actually one of the most normal dinosaurs we know about and are talking about in this video, but it's stuck with this serial killer image because science got it wrong for 50 years. So while Colophysis got blamed for crimes it didn't commit, some herbivores were actual killers. Everyone thinks of Triceratops as this peaceful plant eater that just wandered around munching ferns all day. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's completely wrong. Triceratops killed T-Rex, and we have the evidence.
But one Triceratops
growlhorn was found with a healed T-Rex bite mark on it, which means a T-Rex tried to bite this Triceratops' face, and the Triceratops lived through it. But more importantly, paleontologists have found T-Rex bones.
That's what I'm saying, that they're defending themselves. It doesn't count as like
shape of Triceratops horns.
They're killers.
Talking about 3-foot-long spears attached to a 12-ton battering ram. When a Triceratops charged something, physics was not on the target's side. The horn wounds they found suggest Triceratops didn't just defend themselves, but they also went on the offensive. A scared herbivore runs away. Aggressive one lowers its head and charges. These weren't accidents. They were duels. These were two massive horned dinosaurs ramming into each other until one of them backed down or got seriously hurt. They were basically living bulldozers with attitude problems, and they used those horns for everything from territorial disputes to dating negotiations. So yeah, T-Rex might have been the apex predator, but Triceratops was a thing that made apex predators think twice before picking a fight. The peaceful plant eater thing is just good marketing. This thing was a psychopath. It's like how people today
I don't think it's a psychopath. I think it's kind of just normal. Like, animals are territorial, which is normal. Nothing psychotic about it. And then defending itself with psychotic about it
Are
too. Some of
fat,
them are more
peaceful
confident, some of them are more
herbivores.
scared.
Do not
I don't
ever
see
get
anything
near a
psychotic
hippo.
about that.
It will brutally murder you. I
A
would
hippo
rather
is
be near a
psychotic.
tiger than a hippo if I'm being honest with you. Hippos are huge. But moving on from Triceratops, let's talk more about the spike wounds we
Aren't
briefly
these
mentioned.
herbivores?
An Allosaurus tailbone sits in a museum in Utah with a perfectly round hole punched through it. The hole is exactly 3 centimeters across, and the edges show signs of healing, which means this Allosaurus lived this injury for months before dying. That hole was made by a Stegosaurus tail spike. The match is perfect. Size, shape, angle, everything lines up. A Stegosaurus swung its tail during a fight and drove one of those massive spikes right through an Allosaurus vertebrae, then somehow managed to pull it back out without breaking the spike off. This wasn't defensive behavior. This was violence with precision. 10% of Stegosaurus tail spikes show damage from hitting something hard during the
You gotta play offense sometimes. You can't play defense all the time. Someone attacks you, are you gonna just block, or you're gonna also attack back?
Stegosaurus were regularly using those spikes to stab things, not just waving them around as threats. Another Allosaurus was found with what looks like a fatal spike wound to the hip bone, and there was no healing on that one. Whoever delivered that blow hit something vital, and the Allosaurus died pretty quickly afterwards. The physics of a Stegosaurus tail swing are actually terrifying.
Crazy how this
Those
fossil's
spikes
still
could
here
be
even after
3
millions
feet
of
long,
years.
and the tail muscles were massive. When a Stegosaurus put everything into a swing, those spikes were moving fast enough to punch bone and keep going. Paleontologists have found Stegosaurus back plates with bite marks on them, showing that predators did try to attack from above, but the plates weren't the real defense. They were just a distraction. The real weapon was always behind them, waiting for the predator to get close enough. Stegosaurus could kill you with 4
what were
spears
the
attached to
scales
its
for?
butt,
I mean,
and it regularly did. Now,
can't they
spikes
just
are
bite on the
deadly,
scales?
but some herbivores
The big
prefer
ones?
the sledgehammer approach.
Oh,
Physics
Ankylosaurus.
calculations show that an Ankylosaurus tail club could generate enough force to shatter the leg bone of a T-Rex. Not crack it, not bruise it, but completely shatter it into pieces. The club was essentially a bowling ball made of solid bone.
What's like a
attached to
hammer
tail
club, but
that
just a
was
really
pure
big one.
Muscle. When an Ankylosaurus swung that thing, it was delivering about the same impact as getting hit by a pickup truck. And they have evidence these clubs were actually used quite regularly. But the really interesting evidence comes from the Ankylosaurs themselves. They found an ankylosaur called Zool with damaged armor plates on its sides that show signs of healing. The damage pattern suggests another ankylosaur hit it with a tail club during some kind of fight, which means these things weren't just using their clubs on predators. Ankylosaur domestic disputes apparently involve trying to break each other's ribs with bone
It's
handles.
literally
The
territorial
clubs only
activity.
developed when the
Bro, I
ankylosaur
have 3 birds. I got a new one, and that new one, my 3 birds, the new one I have, even they get into fights. The new one doesn't do anything though. She's nice, but even they are territorial. Like, they will fight each other. It's super normal to be territorial and fight your own kind.
mating contests. Two
It
males
really
would
kind of
stand next to
depends
each other
on
and just wail on each other's sides until one of them gave
of
up or couldn't
personality
stand
of the
anymore.
animal.
Ankylosaurus was basically a walking fortress that could end any argument with one swing of its tail.
One
The fact that T-Rex bones show
one
possible
blow to
club
the head and
damage
it's
suggests
over.
that even apex predators learn to give these things a very wide berth. Nobody wants to fight something that can break your leg from 3 feet away. Now, bone clubs can break legs.
I've
Some
seen this one too.
dinosaurs went on to weaponize their entire skull. A large percentage of
Pachycephalosaurus.
Pachycephalosaurus skulls show evidence of
Pachycephalosaurus.
brain injuries from head-butting contests. That's a culture built around giving each other concussions.
So
The
shiny.
skulls have these weird pitted scars on the top and sides of their domes where the bone was damaged and then tried to heal itself. Sometimes the healing process got infected, leaving even nastier wounds. And the dome itself could be 10 inches thick of solid bone, which tells you exactly how much impact these things were designed to absorb. They didn't just bump heads gently during mating season. They were ramming into each other hard enough to cause permanent brain damage on a regular basis.
Damn.
One skull, called Stan Patchy, has
Stan
massive
Patchy?
gouges carved into the dome. Another specimen has a circular wound where a chunk of bone was literally punched out and then healed over. These were not accidents. They were the result of organized head-to-head combat between animals with weaponized skulls. The really disturbing part is that many of these injuries happen to juveniles. Young Patchies were getting their brains rattled before they even reached adulthood, which means this wasn't just territorial disputes between adults. This was systematic violence that started early and continued throughout their lives.
Damn.
Some of the infected skull wounds probably killed them slowly, because getting your skull cracked is bad enough, but when the crack gets infected and starts rotting, that is a whole different level of suffering. Patchies basically turned headbutting into an extreme sport, except the only problem prize was brain damage, and the losers often died from the injuries weeks later. They spent their entire lives giving each other traumatic brain injuries as a form of social interaction, and somehow they thought this was a good system that was worth continuing for millions of years. That's why I think that is the most psychopathic dinosaur out there, because while it's not a carnivore, giving each other brain damage for your entire life
I
is
feel
just...
like a lot of these weren't psychopath. I feel like I would consider a psychopath animal dinosaur would be something that like kills for fun and not for food. Everyone's gotta eat. Even we consider psychopaths. We kill animals even though we don't need to. But I feel like none of these are really like psychopathic. It's more like if they're killing for fun, like in Jurassic World, the Indominus Rex, like it kills just to kill. It doesn't even eat that food. That is psychopathic traits. I'm not glad that was a good video from Spino Snack. I would have to disagree on his takes, but you guys enjoy your Sunday and have a great day. Peace.